And welcome to another exciting episode of The Energy That Surrounds Us. I'm your host, Michael, and you'll notice that Michelle is not with us tonight. She had something come up, so she won't be able to come on the show tonight. So we just wanted to say we'll miss you on the show and look forward to your return next week. With that being said, with housekeeping done, I am happy to welcome my amazing guest, Meredith Herrenbruck. So, can you hear me?
I can. There's a little feedback happening. There's a repeat.
It could
I
be the
can.
headphones. So, do you want to try without the headphones?
I'm trying without the headphones. I'm seeing how that works. But I think we're good. It was all right. Well, Michael, I'm really if they chime in.
Okay, so apparently the headphones are creating a bang in the audio. Are they off?
They should be off. Do you hear me right now?
There is, but there's like an echo, like digitizing our voices.
I have no idea why. I don't hear it on my side.
Well, I can still clearly understand you, so I'm happy to go forward if you are.
I am. Let's just see what we've got going. Hopefully we'll continue with these. All right. Well, here we are.
Gotta love live shows.
Yes.
So one thing I was wanting to bring up is, well, actually, Linda is saying if we have two tabs open, then one of the volumes may be causing the reverb.
Let me close out absolutely everything else. Oh, you know what? That should fix it. Did I fix it? Let's see. I bet it is. I bet that's what it was. I had a second tab open that might have started playing on YouTube. We'll see how this goes.
Well, it's not fully fixed, but it is clear, and I can understand you, so I'm sure everybody in the audience can understand.
Well, good. I have closed out absolutely everything other than this tab here, so we should be good.
So this happens, and they're saying yes, we can hear. I'm not sure which the correct volume is. Oh, they're saying it sounds cool the way you're talking.
Nice. I don't know. Maybe the guys on the other side are having some fun with us. Honestly, this is so weird. I've never had this before.
Well, it doesn't surprise me, but we'll go ahead and continue on, and we'll just see if it corrects itself over time, or if not, if it gets too bad, we'll just try something. But all in all, I think since we can understand, I am going to dive in with one big question I was talking with you about backstage that I brought up we were going to mention is you talk about Family Soul Constellations. What does that mean?
Okay. Family Soul Constellations was discovered by a German psychoanalyst named Bert Hellinger. I think it was in the 60s or 70s. And he was role-playing with a client. And he realized when he was role playing, he had a propensity to just be guided to say certain things. And then the client says, "Why are you saying that in just that way?" And he says, "Well, what do you mean?" And she says, "That's exactly what my father would say. I mean, verbatim." And he says, "Well, what's going on?" And so what this man, Bert Hellinger, has created or really discovered a way of gathering information on stuck family system energy. And what I mean by that is if you have, say, a family or a person in the family who has undergone loss of family fortune or was never able to get over their grief, or maybe they emigrated or went through a war, basically anything that really traumatized that person. What happens in a family system is that younger generations, in an effort to say I love you, want to take away that person's pain, even if they've never heard about the trauma, known about it consciously at all. It's like any trauma that we talk about that I take care of in NLP, Family Constellations, or Huna. Imagine any unresolved trauma is still pinging out into the universe like a beacon. And until it gets resolved, it's still there. It's still in existence. And people can kind of tap into that information. And so in family constellations, you'll grab onto that energy and take it for your own. And you'll maybe even amplify it. So if you have an experience or know of someone in a family who just can't get it together, and it's not always from family constellations, but often I have seen that, where you have sibling rivalry or just things that don't make sense. And you go, I am a perfectly good parent. We have talked everything out. We've been fairly reasonable. Our kids are kind of normal. But there's always been something amplified. Like if you look at a dial and you go, life is normal, say level 5, but it'll go up to 11. What is going on? That is when I will kind of put on my family constellation hat and do a deep dive into family history, seeing what happened in the past. There were illnesses or wars or traumas and dramas that can lead, or addictions, that can lead into what is unresolved in the family system and how do we shine light on it, forgive it, acknowledge it, and let it rest. And when we do, then the younger generations will shift, either personally and or relationship-wise. It is very, very, very powerful and helpful to heal a person in wherever they're stuck.
So you bring up NLP, which for those of you who may not be familiar is neuro-linguistic language programming, correct?
Neuro-linguistic programming, yes.
So how does that go into the family soul constellation and being used? Is it to help like reprogram or?
Well, I don't use it for family constellations. It's another tool in my toolbox. The 3 main ones I use is NLP, which handles more of a person's personal, mental, and emotional layers, if you will. Family constellations deals with family layers and stuck energies running through the family system that may not be personal to us, but we're grabbing onto it. And then there's Huna, which is more energetic work that relates to ancestors, energetic attachments, things that might be happening in your home or property that are just kind of causing disturbances. I mean, you can think to the nth degree of the movie Poltergeist or The Exorcist, or you can think of something benign where you just are kind of sapped of strength, kind of tired, or maybe you're a little extra angry with your spouse and you have no idea why. So I use these tools in conjunction and I ebb and flow as needed for my clients.
Okay, well, thank you for clearing that up, because in your description you used it, and I was like, oh, so I wanted to make sure I understood that right. So thank you for that. And so using Huna, which is Hawaiian in basis, and neurolinguistic programming and this family soul constellation techniques as your three forefront, how has that impacted your life, and what brought you to pick these three to focus on?
Well, as you know, anyone's growth is a long journey. And I started off in my childhood where I had a trauma to deal with, and I didn't really get much support that I needed at that time. And so it took me years of kind of banging my head against the proverbial wall. And, you know, I did what normal people do, go to therapy and try and hash it out. And over time, I learned so many aspects that were useful, and some that were not so useful. And therapy, I have learned from my experience, um, is it was very helpful to a point. You know, I was getting things off my chest. I was being heard. I was kind of working on things. But then I realized I was spinning my wheels. And I realized I was talking for talking's sake. And I write about my journey in my book, Becoming Ridiculously Awesome. Who doesn't want that? And the book isn't all about that, but it's kind of a springboard into how I discovered NLP and how the universe works, and kind of getting from the micro mini me to more of the greater me, or the greater I. And so when I was spinning my wheels, I was really, really, really frustrated. And I was not at the end of my rope, but I go, this paradigm I'm in is not working. And I kind of just sent a big shout out, like a literal shout out, you know, when your soul is just, it's done. And you go, I need to open my eyes to something new here. And literally a few weeks later, I'm talking with a friend of mine, and he starts asking these questions of, well, what would you like? And what would having that do for you? I'm like, what sort of questions are these? But my body just resonated, and it was eating it up. And it was getting me to understand how I was creating my experience. And I was diving into all these depths of myself that I hadn't done before. And I said, well, what the heck are you doing? Because in less than 15 minutes, I was farther along in those 15 minutes than I was in a year of therapy. And I'm not kidding. And so then I signed up for NLP like 3 days later. And so 2.5 years later, I became a master practitioner. It's so powerful, and it asks questions in such a way that you can really understand the root causes of your experience and how you're creating your experience, and getting you better in touch with your desired state, your future, you know, ideal place and experience. And so it gets you very, very, very unstuck, and greases the wheels and allows you to let go, and put the past in the past. And so you don't have to carry it all the time and manage it, which is partially why a lot of people, I think, are so exhausted as an adult. It's because we've been carrying so many things for so long. We don't know that we don't have to, and we don't have the tools to let them go.
Okay, and I put your website and your links up on the screen, so if someone's hearing this and has questions, they know how to get a hold of you. And I gotta say, I love the title of that book.
Thank you.
I'm like, when I had to look at it twice, because it's like my mind goes, you know, becoming awesome. Yeah, that's cool. But then I was like, wait, there's a third word, ridiculously. That is so cool.
Yeah. Yeah, and I want the book to create joy and that spark and that remembering of that one moment, or many moments, hopefully, in childhood where you're going, I just felt awesome. I felt aligned. I felt just that nothing was going to stop me. And I work with so many clients by now that I know that these things work really, really beautifully together, and that even though someone might say, you can't help me. And I have a lot of people call me, they go, I've tried this, I've tried that. It's not really getting to what I need. That these tools are able to tackle the different layers and aspects that sorry, I was looking at the thing talking about the law of attraction. That's part of it, and we'll get into that in a moment. But when a lot of people will go to therapy, and that's more of the mental and emotional aspects that a person has trying to deal with childhood stuff or relationship things that we're currently having. But what NLP has taught me is that a lot of, if not all of the experiences and trials, traumas, tribulations we're having now are repeats of the imprint, the initial trauma or bad experience or belief system that was created before the age of 3. And because what happens with our beautiful brain, as great as it does a funny thing. When we survive something, say, or you get a gold star from your parents, or you get an A on your paper, you go, wow, the things I did to create that reward, I'm going to do again. And that can be for positive and or quote negative things like, well, I did this and my parents didn't yell at me, or I did this and I got dinner, or whatever it was. And there's a whole range of experiences that people have had, positive and negative. But when we survive something, whatever it is, then our brain goes, well, great, the choices I made and the belief systems that came out of it, I'm going to file away and reuse it because it worked. But as you get older, from 5 to 10, 15, 20, and up to age 40 and beyond, you're using those patterns that worked for you at age 3 or before. And so we can't really consciously make an update. Therapy tells you, great, I know where it came from, I have those memories. But can you change the synapses? Can you change all the belief systems? Because those choices are made so quickly. Our triggers happen so fast that we don't know all that's going on between half a millisecond and 1/100th of a millisecond. It is so fast. So NLP kind of stretches that out, and we look into all those corners and figures out really how you're creating your experience now, where it came from, and let's make new associations and connect you with resources you didn't already know you had, so that your brain is not trying to save you from the past anymore, other than, of course, big scary spiders in the corner, and not wanting to veer off the road. Of course, all those things are going to be in place. But when we can stop surviving a scary childhood thing or a constant parental anger moment or parent addiction, etc., or isolation, or all those things, when we can turn those off, what is the brain and what is the body going to do? It is going to, first of all, kind of go, well, what can I do now? How can I feel better? Well, I don't know. I don't know how to feel better. And so we offer new resources such that our brain can connect with something more pleasant that is okay for that person. And so when we are able to let go of the past, we also have to offer a new future that feels safe and survivable. Otherwise, we're going to never make that choice. So we kind of do a gentle rocking back and forth of going into the future and going into the past and settling things. And what happens is then the brain will stop having to rely on the old patterns because we're now feeling safe now that we're exposed to these new patterns. I hope that makes sense.
It does, and I like how you point out that we have to fill the void, because I think that's one thing a lot of people, when they say, "Oh, I'm doing work on this," or fixing this, is they feel like once they taken away the pattern or belief that doesn't work, that's all they had to do, and they don't think about, well, now you have an empty space. So
Right.
unless you put something in there, something worse or the same thing may just come back and refill it.
Exactly. And that's really well said, because that's why most of us don't evolve or get past where we are, is because we don't, well, the first layer is we don't know what the next better thing is. The other deeper layer is we don't feel safe seeing other resources and opportunities because that's not in our programming that's survivable. So if it felt safe and survivable, then you'd probably make that leap, right? So there's this thing called belief creates experience, and experience creates belief. And so again, we have to go, well, if you don't want to feel this way, what could you feel like, or what would you feel like? And some people say, I have no idea. And that's okay, because that's, again, programming to keep ourselves feeling safe. But what if we go, well, what if, do you know of a friend or maybe a famous person or someone on TV who has had that experience of feeling safe and feeling good in this way that you are wanting yourself to feel? And they go, well, oh, that person, absolutely. Oh, I know a lot of people. They go, well, well, if they're able to feel it, then maybe why aren't you able to feel that? And then then we start to unpack and open why you are not able to access those resources or feel safe and good about having that new desired experience. So we cover our survival skills and all these things with a lot of blankets, and we can't see the hows and whys of it because we've lived with it for so long. It becomes so automatic. And so NLP really beautifully uncovers all the mechanisms that you have beautifully created, and then helps you kind of reassociate and create new opportunities. It's like, when you buy, say you had a purple car forever, and you go and it's kind of crapped out, and now you've got this brand new, let's say, green car. And anyone who's purchased a new car, whether, it's new or old, but they're new into their family, well, then it's amazing how you see all the other similar cars to your car. It's because of your filters are different. You say, oh, well, I have a green car. Oh, my gosh, I didn't realize there are all these green cars on the road, because you feel happy with your choice, you're excited, and now you're opening outward. Now, to answer the question about talking about law of attraction, that is another level of what starts to happen, is once you start to feel safe and good in this new experience, then you start to attract more of what you are feeling safe and good with. So when people are having a hard time with the law of attraction, you have to get into, well, what am I actually attracting? What do I feel safe with? What am I telling myself about, the world and how I am in that world? And so law of attraction is not just I'm going to hold my fingers up and dream and I want, and I'm going to manifest somehow. There are all these layers of the soul layers, emotional, mental, and spiritual layers that you have to kind of get through, clear the clutter, if you will, and then you can start becoming more aligned with what you want to experience and to create for your world.
Right. And so a question I've been contemplating asking, because I know it can get into kind of a controversial topic, is when you talk about survivable patterns and programming, to me that sounds like the ego, which I define as the earth guide only. It's designed to help us here on earth. So is that something that NLP can help to program to broaden its horizon, or help you to expand, or is the ego something completely different and we're stepping into a category far off and somewhere else?
No, I would imagine it's more related to the ego, if the ego is kind of the identity of a human being in a body and having a certain experience, versus, say, the soul level or the as I call the big I. If you've ever read the book Power versus Force, there's the little I, like the little person, me against the world, my individual self, who has to survive, and that there's a differentiation between this body and the outside world. So yes, I would suppose that NLP does deal more with the ego, the individual self, the meditations and the emotions that come with this body. Family Constellations is now the family systems. And then Huna focuses more, again, on the energies. What is attached to us? That's jumping off the cliff into more of the energetics of where you get on to not necessarily aliens. I've never personally experienced that. Although I think it's very possible they exist, and I've heard lots of great, wonderful stories. But I deal more with the beings that you cannot see, that have a soul, that are wandering about, that are of the angelic realms. They're guides, they're non-passed over people, and all sorts of that in between. And so when I help someone, I clear them first of any entities that are attached, not attached, negatively influencing them, which can be ancestors. Even sometimes ancestors, they bring their baggage and they go, I love you, I want to help you, I want to support you, and they stay around and they stay within kind of our realm. But again, that brings their baggage, and it can just weigh in or weigh on our experience and influence our experience. So I do some cleanup, and then the body and the mind and the soul are more ready to be able to springboard into new learnings and evolution wherever that person wants to go.
And that's an interesting thing that I was looking into when I was looking at your material and everything is, when you say, using this to remove attachments, it brought to me, or I know a lot of people ask this, is how do you know you have an attachment, and then how do you clear yourself of the attachment?
Okay, very beautiful question. And I want everyone to know this, everyone who's listening. So there are different levels of attachments. Okay, so in the spiritual realm, there are, let's say, I don't like to say the good guys versus the bad guys or good versus evil. Everyone is on a scale, right, of, say, most negative, and then there are those that are most positive, say angels, archangels, the higher ups, true source, creator, like that's just, a 1,000,000-watt light bulb, if you will. There are some who in the world who are, I say, nefarious, kind of negative. They like to control. They like to create fear. They can be very subtle. Most of them are very subtle because they don't want to be seen. They don't want to be kicked out. They want to take your energy. They want to scare you. They want to make you feel small. And when we get out of balance, which happens maybe 20 times a day, right? Someone, veered you off, or someone cut you off on the road, or someone wasn't very nice, et cetera, right? When we have a frustration or a big one, like a big trauma, our soul can dim its light bulb, if you will, and it can create holes. And when we are lower in energy and our vibration is lower, more negative, then we will attract more negative beings. And if we don't kind of stay strong and learn how to do this more on a daily basis or weekly basis or quarterly, depending on how awesome you are, but I check it in on myself all the time. How am I feeling? And we'll get into how do you know. But I want to start off with what is out there. Not everyone is going to have a very negative attachment. That's creating havoc. But everyone I have cleared has probably had one or two that are just kind of level 1, level 2 out of 4, where 4 are kind of the big guns and they're kind of scary and they're not really nice at all. And that's like exorcist level that you see in the movies, almost. But a lot of people will have a level 1 or level 2, and maybe an ancestor attached or nearby who's really wanting constant communication. And then you'll have your angels around, guiding you, sending information in your dreams, and so forth. And so those are the main players, okay? Sometimes you have non-passed over people just kind of cruising around who don't know what the next step is. They feel guilty. They have unresolved issues. They don't know they're dead. And I will feel them. I am an empath, and I sometimes can hear them. Sometimes, a lot of times, I will just feel into a room. Sometimes I have to turn it off because I'll get overloaded. But I've learned to monitor that more now that I'm a mom. I have 2 daughters, and I turned into definite mama bear when they were little. I'm like, no one is going around my house, and no one is going around me for the next few years. End of story. And they did not. And so you can put energetic walls around your property, your house, and yourself, and just check in. Do I feel like me? Do I feel good? Does it feel like something else is attached to me? Now, in the beginning, you'll probably freak yourself out. Oh my gosh, it's such a big world. But the more attuned you are into who you are and what it feels like to be grounded and expanded and happy and balanced, then anytime you are not feeling that, just ask yourself questions. Just go, all right, is it me? Do I need to kind of pound a pillow right now, or take a walk, or journal, or do all these tools to rebalance ourselves? If it starts to feel maybe a new addiction is coming on, different voices in your head, or just sometimes you feel like something is on you or attached to you, and it just doesn't feel like you. Maybe you have bad dreams that just does not, like, the memories and these dreams just do not seem like you at all. There's probably an attachment happening. They're not always negative, but it's always just a check-in. You know more than you think you do, and this is a lot of intuitive self-reflection work.
So I got a question for you that just popped in my mind with this. Is talking about feeling and everything, is because I'm one of those that's like really in tune with what the body needs and everything, but every once in a while I get like what I call the shadow bugs, where it feels like there's a spider or an ant or something crawling on you, and then it just disappears, and it's like you swat and there's nothing there. Is that possibly an attachment trying to attach and then just isn't able to and moves on? Or what would that possibly be?
I would imagine, I don't know the answer to that, but I would ask myself, is it that I'm connecting with someone who's trying to connect with me? Because when we are empathic, or we're souls in a body, right? We have thoughts, feelings, we have our eyesight, we have all the 5 senses, or 6 senses, if you will. And you can check in with each of those senses and go, is it something else? Or is it someone else? No or yes. Okay. Is it something from the past that I'm picking up in this room? Yes or no? And you ask yourself kind of non-leading questions as best you can and then you're your own tuning fork. And you just check in. The more you do it, the more you trust yourself, and it will lead you to the right answer. And sometimes if we're not really getting right answers, sometimes I'll use a pendulum, right? You can use keys hanging from a chain, and it just magnifies your body's movements. You can just check in, what is a yes and what is a no? And you can recalibrate before you ask questions and go, okay, am I aligned? Is my my poles, basically, as if we're a battery, positive and negative, am I running my circuit correctly? Because sometimes your poles can flip. And so if you're just feeling off, you go, okay, reset. reset your poles, and then everything else will start to align during the day. It's a very weird thing, but yeah, we do have polarity in our systems. So just ask yourself questions and see where it leads. You'll know the answers more than you think you do.
Cool, and that's helpful because I forget about the reset, and sometimes I will hear myself going, "Hold on, I need to reset." So that's kind of cool how the body can naturally take over and do what it needs to do.
Mhm.
And when we talk about ancestors and everything, my question is like when loved ones pass, how do we keep their memories alive without them attaching to us or allowing them to attach to us?
Hmm. Well, one question I have before I answer is, what is it about one wanting to keep their memory alive? Is it to pass on information on how great that person was, or to tell stories? Uh, can you kind of share a little bit more on why, like what keeping a person's memory alive means to you?
Well, for me, it's keeping them in your heart and in your, the memories that you had with them, in your mind. So, like when you're having a hard day or a hard time, it's like you can go, "Oh, I remember when so and so was around and they said this," and it's like, can lift you up and start, raising you back up to where you're like, yeah, I had a bad day. It's okay. I can brush it off and we'll go to sleep and start the next day off better. But I'm just in general, I'm just like, cuz I noticed in your write up that you said, people can get attached to their loved ones that have passed, and I was like, that's interesting. So how can we prevent that from happening?
Well, one one thing to do as far as living in this world where you don't want anyone to attach to you, good, bad, or indifferent, is number one step is to learn to ground every day and find your balance and alignment. Meaning, find yourself in your body and really connect in with it. If anyone has had trauma or major things happen to them, sometimes they kind of want to be half out of the body, right? Because it was painful and we don't want to fully feel or experience. And so we'll kind of turn ourselves off a little bit or kind of jump out a little bit. So it's important to start grounding and finding your body and being okay with being in the body. Um, and then finding where your boundaries are. A lot of people say, there's an aura, right? We have our energetic field, which when we're feeling good might be 24 inches out, but standard is what kind of the edge of our experience and what we're picking up is 18 inches out. So start to connect in with, if you're meditating, create a bubble around yourself about 18 inches and see what color it is and if it's smooth or if it's jagged, and learn to master your mind where you can, when a disturbance in the force, if you will, comes up, whether it's at work or with a spouse or whenever, big or small, go, okay, take that breath, ground in, find myself, okay, boundaries. And it doesn't mean a huge, thick wall, but it's a force field, if you will, where you can be more attentive to other people coming into your space and go, do I need someone into my space? Do I want them? Or can I put my arm out physically if it's a physical person? No, thank you. I'm good, and so forth. So it's learning to be in your body and then boundaries. And I've learned that a lot of people have issues with boundaries. If you've had narcissistic parents, being bullied, trauma, and so forth, where someone literally invaded your space, it's helpful to work on that. And so, not just because, so to address the family members may be attaching. Just because you think of them doesn't mean that they're attaching to you. You can still have a conversation to the other side of the veil, and it's still a conversation. One visual that would be helpful is to imagine if you want advice from your ancestors. Go into meditation, or maybe before you're going to sleep, imagine walking into a neutral space. Maybe it's a meadow or a gazebo in the middle of a field, and go, I would love your advice. I would love to meet you in the middle, outside of me. And so then all the separation is appropriate. And you have your conversation, and you say what you need to say or feel what you want to feel and get information. And then when it's time to close, go, thank you so much for coming. I love you. I miss you. And then let them go, with your heart. You're always going to be connected with that person, and so you'll never lose that. But you can still imagine them being their own selves and your own self. And so there's a universal rule where there's one soul per body. And if there's more than one, then you have the right to say, thank you for all the good you may have done. You are dismissed. You need to go now. And that's a very, very short phrase that people can do if at the end of a conversation with something that's attached to them, go, thank you for all the good you may have done, but you are dismissed. Because you have sovereignty to your body.
Right. And Chelsea is bringing up a good question that I want to help, because to clarify, is she says, I thought that ancestors who guide can be in a good way. And she's saying maybe not in the perspective that you're speaking of, but is there a good guidance of ancestors? And I think we were kind of hitting on that just now, but I
Yes.
wanted to make sure that we cleared what we were referring to as dealing with the ancestors.
Yes. Ancestors always are great guides, I think. But the important thing is to have them be in their own space and guide, right? Imagine having your parent constantly attached to you. As I'm sure we've all experienced, have you done your homework? Have you done this? You need to do it that way, and so forth and so on. And they end up kind of overtaking our experience. What's important in this life is to have our own experience and not be necessarily directly influenced by our ancestors. Another idea is if someone, we all get there, I think, or have had those moments where it's at the end of the day, or you're just having a really rough patch in your life. And you go, I need support, but maybe my parents have died. And I feel I don't have anyone I can really rely on. This is where you can do in family constellation style, is you can imagine or even put on note cards and put them against the wall behind here, right? You can do father behind you on my right side, and then the mother on the left side. And that's a family constellation format. It's just how it is. And you can say, you can write on these cards, mother with her highest self, and father with his highest self. And then you can even imagine all your ancestors behind them, and all of their hands are on the younger one's shoulders. And you will start to feel all this energy coming through your body, and you'll feel so much support. Now, is it just a mentation here that we're just imagining this? I have learned that it is not. When you kind of step outside of this space and time, and you are really connecting in on your soul level, and you're sitting there and you go, I just need support. I need to lean back into this wall and into my family with their highest selves, as if, they didn't have their own traumas and dramas growing up too. But if they're fully whole and just beaming, of course they want to support you and give all they can to you. And that is one very good tool as well, to get that support without having them attached to you. I hope that's really helpful.
It is, and it's kind of brought to my mind, kind of a question that I've been trying to figure out how to word it rightly, because, like you're saying, there is no better or worse or positive or negative. It's perception. And I've noticed when going on like paranormal investigations, certain people will always come out and say, "Oh, I think I have an attachment," and take a picture and go, "Yeah, look, there's an attachment." And some people, like, I have not had an attachment, but I know I had an experience where something tried to attach to me,
Mhm.
and I could go within and I could see, like, it was like they grabbed my arm and my arm was like burning their hand. And so they had to let go. And the
Mhm.
first thing out of my mind is, you know who I am. Is it because I was standing in my power and standing in who I am, they couldn't attach to me?
Yeah.
And why they can attach to others is because they don't stand in their power?
Yes. The more fear a person has and the smaller they feel, the more others can control you. I mean, imagine just all of us humans, if there's someone in authority, who misuses their power and they see a weaker person, then they're going to try and control that person. But if someone who knows who they are, knows how to balance themselves and make themselves really big and really bright and strong, like imagine in martial arts where you dig deep and you get big and you go, I know for a fact that you cannot mess with me. And if you do try to, I will call the higher ups, angels, archangels, and they will come down and help you. They will always come, but they always have to be asked. And yeah, so your energy was too bright for them, and you probably had a lot of. What I'm getting is you had a lot of. Oh, what would you call it? And I haven't experienced this before, but it's like you have almost. I don't. It's not the right word, but it's like charms. Like you have a lot of energy that is laid on you. Either you've done it personally yourself, or someone has laid it on you. Like imagine holy water, right? There are prayers and things that are helping to wrap you and support you and protect you as well. So it's those things as well that I think are coming through. And they're going, oh yeah, that energy, it's going to blast me. I can't touch it. It's too dissonant.
It's interesting you bring that up because I had an incident happen when I was 2 that I've been slowly, like you're saying, peeling back the layers of and learning more and more about. And a friend in Greece commented that there was a spirit that came and said that I will be protected from here on out, that, it'll be different for me. And so it's interesting that you picked up on that as well.
Yeah, I haven't actually experienced that when I check in on people. So that was new for me. So thank you for that. I'm getting a lot of like deeper pink color, but it looks like it has a lot of symbols on it. And it's just kind of on the outside of your aura. And that's what I'm getting.
And the on the flip side too is, as we were talking backstage, I've studied Huna, so I do have some Huna protection seals on me,
Mm-hmm.
and
Probably.
studying other modalities I do put layers of protection on me. So I'm wondering if that could be too why, the pink with the symbols are, if those could be those.
Absolutely. The power of our mind um, creates our reality. And so some people ask me, well, how are you able to do this work, right? I'm a person, just north of San Francisco. How can you clear someone in Texas or across the world? And when you start to understand that there's no such place as far away, that we're all part of the holographic universe, that my intention can go wherever I direct it, however big or small. And that's the power of manifesting as well, is when you can hone in on your focus and your intentions, there's nothing you can't, practically nothing you can't do. So I can heal people. I don't know if I can use that word, but I can help clear them and do all this work remotely because it's as my teacher from Hawaii says, you're using the coconut wireless. You can check in on anything. You can sense anything anywhere, and you can protect yourself with intention. You can, and it's huge. So if one is starting to feel scared, well, then you power up. You ground. You get support from the earth. You get support from, the energies around and your guides and so forth. And, if you do Reiki, I'm sure one could do symbols and like all these things. On one hand, I'm going to do a little caveat. On one hand, I'm learning more about this. Just writing a symbol, I don't know if that necessarily does anything. I have learned that there are symbols that have been used over and over and over again in, say, for example, Reiki, that sometimes over time, however, those symbols have gotten muddied because of the various energies of people using that same symbol. So it's not just the symbol itself, it is what our clean intentions are for that is appropriately aligned with that symbol. So we can power up, we can expand, and we can say, absolutely not. And when you know it in your heart and your soul, they can't touch you. And they wouldn't want to because they know they'd just get blasted. It's very interesting.
So I appreciate that because, I do know Reiki, and so I know what you mean about the symbols and everything. And one of the things that I learned, because I studied paganism as well, with the elements is going, well, if the elements are energy, Reiki's energy, Huna, for example, is energy. I took and was like, okay, so yes, my energy reacts this way to this symbol, but what if I added this element, like the Reiki energy for healing? So I go and I set the intention, well, what element does this person need or do I need to heal? And I add the element in. And I noticed all of a suddenly it's like, especially like when it's electricity or, lightning as an element, I'm like, I can feel my fingers like start to tingle. And I'm like, oh, this is going to be interesting. And it's like, I can feel the symbol like getting a whole new life, so to speak, like you're saying.
Very
And
cool.
so, yeah, it is amazing what intention we can do. And I think we lost Linda. So, what we were talking about, Linda, is attachments and why they attach to some people and not other people, and how we can clear them out. Now, with that being said, there's one thing I find interesting that I don't know if it's NLP or the Huna or what, but past lives. We hear people talking about past lives, and we know they bring, certain perceptions to the forefront in this life that we have to work on. How does one go about clearing in your mind past life baggage? Like, that's something we don't think about. We just think about, saying, oh, I drowned in a past life. I got to clear my fear of water.
Yeah.
What about the baggage that caused you to be drowned? When I was reading your stuff, going, that's an interesting thing. What about the past life baggage? What happens to that?
Yes. It's a lot to clear up in this life. My God. So that's the Huna level, primarily. And I will work with a person one-on-one, and we will do a past life regression. If the person cannot do it themselves, as far as get pictures in their head and get information, then I will do it for them. And what I've learned too, there were some clients this past year where their trigger in this life, where there was someone who passed away in this life they were very close to, and it triggered a response, like a hyper response of depression and trauma for over 2 years. And where this person was debilitated, couldn't barely work, etc. And all the doctors, said take this or do this or and so forth. Nothing was working. And when we were working on the current trauma, I realized that after some time I go, this is an echo, a repeat of another trauma. And so we went into her past life where it was the new trauma in this lifetime was almost verbatim or kicked off the same feelings of the unresolved trauma in the past life. And when we resolved the trauma in the past life, then she was no longer traumatized and depressed in this life for her current experience. And so it was a very interesting thing that when you have unresolved traumas that you carry with you, well, then it's going to be amplified still until you get to that root cause and acknowledge and can put that to bed somehow. And I want to add, it's not just past life trauma, but it's also soul fragments that you have to help clean up and reintegrate into your system as well. Have you heard of what soul fragments are? Have you talked about it?
I have, and I'm also being aware that we're like 2 minutes from the hour.
No.
Are you okay if we go a little over?
Absolutely. Yeah, let's keep
Okay,
going.
I know everyone's got time and stuff scheduled, so I didn't want to dive into something and going, oh, I'm running late because I didn't realize what time it was.
All good. No, let's keep going.
So my understanding is soul fragments are pieces of ourselves, like the way I interpret it is like feeling like Ireland is home. That's because there's a piece of my soul from a past life there that's calling me home to reintegrate to making myself more whole, or as they term in the metaphysical world, the one self or oneness. Is that what we're referencing to, or is it something a little bit more esoteric and deeper?
I think it's a little different, and the reason I say that is because, one, I have a deep affinity for Ireland myself, and when I look into that, I go, is that an ancestral genetic connection, or is that a past life affinity? Like I had a really good life in Ireland at one point. Soul fragments are, I think, different because a soul fragment occurs when there is again, major trauma. Maybe in a past life you were burned at the stake or you drowned or something horrible happened. When it is too much for that soul to experience, part of you will literally fracture off and freeze in space and time. That has been my experience so far with soul fragments. And I worked with a woman in San Francisco many years ago when I was just learning all this stuff. And she did past life regressions and soul fragment cleanup and so forth. And she says, okay, well, let's kind of go back and let's see what we see. And it was me being burned at the stake. And I saw this white wisp come out of the body and just shoot off, into the forest. And I opened my eyes, I looked at her, I'm like, what the heck is that? She goes, just follow it. And she's seeing exactly what I'm seeing in our mind's eye. I follow it, and it's a soul fragment. And what was interesting was my current experience in this lifetime was I always felt shattery. I felt, not whole, if you will. I didn't feel fully in my body, but I had that experience for so long, I didn't know any different. So we work on kind of making nice, if you will, apologizing and say, I am so sorry you went through this. It was horrible, and I'm so sorry, but I've got this now. This is kind of the Family Soul Constellation pieces that I'm weaving in and using back and forth. And I go, I am so sorry, but I've got this now, and it is safe to come home. And I will clear with a blue energetic net. I will clear the soul fragment, make sure it feels okay. Maybe I have to do more reconciling. And then there will just be a calm and a go. And then there will be this, I want to come home. And then you bring that soul fragment into you. And with one client, the room filled with yellow light, and that blew me away. So there is something that actually happens in the integration. People will feel different, fuller, their voice might change, and they'll be different. So soul fragments are very, very important to reintegrate at the appropriate time, because then you'll be brighter and have more resources and feel fuller in your body and more ready to take on more of the world. The world and your whole path needs as much of you as it can to get through all that it needs to.
Right, and that kind of makes sense because when I was in Egypt on a tour with a friend, one of the things that we would do every night is, after dinner, is everyone was feeling tired and I was feeling energized. And so I was like, hey, I know Reiki. And everyone's like, can you Reiki us? And so I'd go around the table and I was like, there may have been like 10, 15 people, there. And some said yes, some said no. But it amazed me in going through maybe like, say, 8 or 9 of them. I didn't feel phased at all.
Good for
I
you.
was like, and it was like I could feel it in a way that I never felt before. And I felt like in Egypt, I did integrate a piece of my soul. So, do you feel like that's why the Reiki was like interacting with that and going, hey, now that we're whole or more whole, this is the new level of what we're capable of and shared out?
It sounds like it. What I have learned, the higher up I go on my learning, um, the more I've learned that it's less about me, quote, healing the person. Like I come across it more of, I am guided to ask certain questions. I'm guided to say this thing at this time. I'm constantly listening, checking in. Who needs to say what needs to be said, and so forth. And so it's less from the ego, and it's more of what needs to happen here. And so when one is more whole, highly aligned, I think my guess, and tell me if this resonates with you, is that the Reiki is coming through you. There are sources also operating through you, such that you're as a body are not getting burned out, right? Because I would imagine I'm level 2 Reiki. I have not become a master at all, so I don't know what those levels feel like. But from my work, my hands will get really hot, and I try and, in a way, get out of the way. I try to turn off the small mind of trying to control and manipulate and go, this is how it needs to be done. When I become more of a conduit and allowing the higher energies to come through and I'm guided to do the work, the cleaner it is, the more powerful it is, and the less tired I get. So when I do it more correctly or in alignment, I'm very energized at the end of it as well.
Right. And yeah, I did reach the Reiki master level. And the one thing that I loved about from 1, 2, 3 in mastership was the one thing they instilled in us is like you were saying, it's not you using your energy. Never use your energy.
Yeah.
Pull it in from the universe, be the conduit, and it'll take care of itself. If you use your own, you're going to burn yourself out and you're going to find yourself having to cut cords with everyone because you're connecting to them and giving away your energy, which is not what you're supposed to do.
Yeah, you can create an absolute mess. And there, when I was just starting to clear properties, I would get really exhausted, and I would have to jump in a big hot tub or a big bathtub with tons of Epsom salts for an hour. But I mean, I would be drained, and it'd be 12 o'clock in the afternoon, and I'm like, I'm ready for a big fat nap. And when I started to go, just let it go and stop trying to muscle through things. And I think that's what martial arts teaches too, just to get on that subject for a moment. Like Aikido, ninjutsu, and maybe I was talking with a guy today about all these arts, and even jujitsu, I believe. But they are using other people's energies, and you're just moving them around you. And you're centered and calm and aligned. And so that's, to me, the biggest lesson of how to navigate this world is find your alignment. Clear out all the past, clear out all that old stuff, and find your alignment in the whole system. Stop trying to force and manipulate. And it's more from coming from power than force. That makes sense.
It does. And Linda unfortunately had to go because it was late for her.
Oh,
But she has a good question here I want to make sure we ask is how does reoccurring psychic loops relate to soul fragments? Are they the same thing?
I don't know if I'm familiar with that phrase, recurring psychic loops. Does that mean echoes of someone, um, like something that has happened in the past that is still broadcasting? Is that what that means?
I am not sure how she's interpreting it, but to me, if I break it down to psychic loops, to me it sounds like patterns of behavior that are repeating and cycling, like history repeats itself so many
Ah,
times. So I'm thinking what she's asking is like you're in a relationship, you hit a certain point, something happens and you're out, then you start a new relationship, something happened, you're out, and the pattern keeps repeating
got it.
the loop.
Okay. It can come from a few different sources, which is why I have these three tools to then go, oh, it's not here, it's there. So maybe it's a childhood pattern that you're repeating, that's NLP. If it is a family pattern that you have grabbed onto, then we do constellation work. If it's an echo or a repeat from a past life and it's a magnified trigger, then we go the Huna route. So that's how I'd probably answer that. But most patterning that I have experienced is from childhood, um, and occasionally from the other stuff too. And maybe even patterns are from entity attachments that you are, um, all their baggage that you are now experiencing. I had a client who kept having this dream of a White House in a field. And she'd never seen this White House before. And so I was just beginning my work in 2008, and I needed some clients. So my friend's like, okay, great, I'll hop on the table. And so her husband was there, and he was really curious about what I did. And she's like, I don't know, I'm kind of good. You know, my career is working, all this stuff is working. And her husband pipes in and says, wait a minute, no, you have this dream about that White House all the time. She goes, oh, yeah, that's right, I do. And so she tells me about this dream, and it's very short, but she goes, and then it just ends up being scarier and scarier, even though nothing happens, but I just wake up in a panic. So she couldn't see or see any pictures or journey, as we say in Huna. She couldn't journey, so I did it for her. And it ended up being basically the dream was the last day of a man who passed away in the 1920s in the South. And his whole family was killed by a grifter, if you will, someone who had actually escaped from prison. And the trauma of this man kept replaying in my friend. And so when we were able to uncover it, then we were able to release him and have him go into the light. And then after that point, my friend never had that dream again. So again, it could be that as well. You just never know.
Okay, and Chelsea's got an interesting question or comment that I'm kind of gonna word into a question too, if that's all right. Is She says, I've been fragmented in past lives, murdered for love in 3 past lives, children in used, and I'm gonna go into this and saying, can we retrieve the soul fragments or process this without having to relive the trauma?
Yes. Yeah, because sometimes that just sucks, and we just, there are certain traumas, coaches that they make you go through the trauma, and NLP doesn't do that either. We'll do certain visualizations to turn it down, put it in black and white, put it 1,000 miles away from you, so you get the impression, such that you can access where it's being held in your brain and body, just to access it, but not be re-traumatized. We can do the same as, we can do something similar for soul fragments as well. And that's why because of me being an empath, I can do that journey and that work for you. Absolutely. There are ways, there's no reason to have to re-traumatize yourself. But the homecoming is very sweet. And it is a very beautiful moment. As I said, one time there was literally bright yellow light coming out of this person, and I'm looking at it, and it's like you can see it, but you can't see it. It's almost like daylight times 1,000 that you see coming through, the sky. And I'm looking at it, and I'm looking at my teacher because we're all in practice, and I'm looking at the client, and I go, are you seeing this? And she goes, yes, I am. And it was just absolutely brilliant. So the homecoming is very sweet, and the energy shifts in the person and the room and all those who have experienced and who are witness to it as well.
That does sound amazing. And Linda asked before she had to leave as well. And I've heard of pulling your power back to you. Is this the rejoining of the soul fragments, pulling them back in as a part of it? Or is this more of a visualization and you're not really going to that level?
It feels more of just pulling your power in, of the power that you do have with the parts that are part of you, pulling your power back. When, as an empath or anyone who kind of unconsciously sends their energy out there, and they don't realize that they're paying attention to everything else in the room or the airport, or so forth. It's important to, if you're starting to feel tired or irritable and so forth, check in on where your focus is. Are you, again, grounded, centered, aligned within this 18 inches around you? If you are beyond, then you need to kind of reset and bring that in. I don't believe that this has anything to do with fragments. It's sounding like a very different thing.
Okay. And Chelsea's bringing up something which I'm going to take it to a more esoteric level. She says, I've been fragmented due to forbidden love, 3 lives worth, and kids were taken or died. My shaman friend accessed my soul records with my permission. This is good stuff. Now, the way I'm going to phrase it and work it is can we get soul fragments through the Akashic records? If we can access those, can we pull in the fragments and help bring those in?
No, I haven't worked with the Akashic records, but let me just check in. I'm kind of getting that the Akashic records are not, well, it's not true. I was going to say it's not really a portal, but I think it can be used as a portal, because the records, from my understanding, is all the information throughout space and time in all layers and dimensions. Like, it's got everything in there. Right. So I guess it could be a portal. What I have experienced personally from soul fragment work is I don't know if you can necessarily do it yourself. It is very important to have someone who's experienced enough to know what you're seeing and experiencing and ask the right questions. But I think it's good to do one-on-one. Like being human, it's important to have an experiential experience, right? We have touch and taste and sight and hearing because that gives us a certain quality of experience. And I think having the soul fragments brought to you and you be part of that homecoming, I don't know, I just kind of keep getting that's kind of necessary. Rather than getting a letter in the mail, where it's a little third party-esque, I think you can do it more directly, and that would be a little bit more complete, if you will.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. And one of the things I'd like to get your opinion on or your take on is like you talk about objects having attachments.
Mhm.
Like say like my father passed away and I have a necklace of his that I don't wear often, but sometimes I do. How can I make sure one, there's no attachment on it, and two, if there is, how do I clear any attachments from that object?
Okay. To answer the first part of your question, yes, objects can have energy. It can have two things. One, it can just have energy of intention, right? Love, hate, anger, any emotion you can possibly experience. When it's big enough, other people can pick up on it. Um, houses can have energy in it, and maybe they even have souls, right? I'm not quite sure about quite the soul part, but I have certainly felt certain rooms have good feelings, bad feelings, hot spots, cold spots, really negative, maybe you have portals coming through, vortexes, all sorts of things. For objects, if it is positive or negative, check in with yourself and go, is this just a feeling? Is this a leftover from the previous owner or a previous owner? If there are negative things happening in that room or where that object is being held, well, then that's an attachment. And that is, and again, if it's a negative vibe that's coming off of that object, I'm not saying it's for the necklace at all, because I'm not getting that feeling at all. But if you say, and I've noticed it more often in any object, is knives tend to have attachments. There's something about the handheld quality of a knife. It's very personal. It tends to be in your power hands when you're using it. And if you've used it for, I don't know, fear purposes or negative purposes or angry purposes and so forth, and you don't, it's very different than hunting purposes, right? When you're trying to feed yourself, that's a very different energy. Then sometimes energies that are of similar quality and level of vibration, they will attach. And sometimes negative things can come out of that. So you can clear them yourself. So there are a few different phrases. You can look it up, but there's this very simple phrase from Ho'oponopono, which is a Hawaiian prayer. There are a few different Ho'oponopono prayers. The very short one is, I'm sorry, please forgive me, I love you, and I thank you. It is meant to clear the deck. So don't speak it from your mind or just your mouth. Speak it from your soul. And ground in and just imagine, again, you're a conduit from your ancestors, from greatness, from high-level workings and energies. And put your hand on it. And you lay it on your less dominant hand. Put your power hand over it. Say a prayer. Your intentions, the more focused you are and more powerful you are, you can clear it yourself. It does take practice, and it does take time. So in the beginning, maybe you would get someone to help you with that. But your attention is very, very powerful.
Okay, and last thing I'd like to ask of your experiences is because you talk about paranormal attachments and stuff. So, going under the assumption you've maybe done some paranormal investigating or, you know someone who has, how does Huna and NLP help you, or has it impacted you in the paranormal field or paranormal side?
Um, NLP a little bit less so, but on the higher levels of NLP, you actually do get into energetic work. So it's complementary. Huna is where I definitely go into connecting, checking in with all that's happening in that space, learning to ground and shield and protect and get big, and also remain humble. There are certain videos and things out there where someone can come in like a bull in a china shop, which is not very respectful. I have learned when I was young in this work, my first clearing, I came in like a bull in a china shop, and the corner of the room actually yelled no to me. And I learned to quickly shift my behavior. And I go, wow, that's right. I'm coming in on their land, their space. Let me do some investigating and ask the right questions, and let's see where we go. And when I come from more humility, but still strength, but asking questions, I get a lot farther. And so I use my Huna work to help those who are stuck, who don't want to go, don't know where to go, feel guilty going, etc. Um, when I come from humility and expansiveness, um, again, there's a much sweeter reunion at the end of that session, and the room will shift, and light will come in, and all the prickles and all the uncomfortable cold spots will just go away.
Okay. And so I appreciate you giving us some extra time. And I'm curious, do you have any projects or anything that you're working on that you want to share with everyone?
Well, goodness, I have a few projects going. I am creating a 7 days of becoming ridiculously awesome video kind of masterclass, if you will. And I'm also working on a video about boundaries. I've learned more and more that I bring up the subject of boundaries. A lot of people are resonating with that. So I'm working on those two things right now. And I do want to say, if anyone is interested in having a clearing done or having sessions, I am available. Go to my website at livingyourawesome.com. If you have a funky space or something that needs to be cleared, even an object, I can do it remotely. And I really love doing that work. It is very rewarding for all involved. I've helped children be able to actually sleep in their room. And they were afraid of entities that were there and, non-passed over people. Uh, and so if there's anywhere where you're stuck, I do offer free consultations so I can help kind of guide you into how I can help you. So go to livingyourawesome.com and get my book. I'm all around on the internet and social media, and I'd love to be able to help you in any way I can.
Well, I have to say I have thoroughly enjoyed this, and I have learned a lot, as I'm sure those that are watching have, and um, I'm really glad we kind of talked a little bit backstage too, because I feel like everything that you were asking of me and that I was asking of you backstage, we actually ended up covering.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, I don't know how we're gonna work this in, but we did.
We did. Yeah, it's been fantastic. Thank you so much for having me, Michael.
Yes, thank you. And I'm going to take a moment to thank the chat room for all the great questions and comments. And I will play our outro. And Before I play the outro, though, a little bit of housekeeping. Next week, I will be back on the show with Shane and Shauna about all things Texas Scaregrounds. So that's a haunted house in Mineral Wells that's opening next weekend. So you'll want to catch all about that. So I am grateful to have them back on the show. Thank you, Meredith, for coming on and taking a chance on my show, because this is our first time to meet, and I know that's always a little risky to, be like, can I put myself out there with this person, or how is this show going to go? So thank you for taking the chance.
It's been a pleasure. I love all the questions, you guys. Really good questions. And yeah, a lot of this isn't as scary as you think it is. And just trust your intuition. You know where you need to go. So it's been a great show. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And so I'm going to send us out with the outro. And for all of you who are watching, whether it's morning, evening, or afternoon, make it a great day, great night, great afternoon. Thank you for watching.
You have just listened to the energy that surrounds us with your host, Michael Kopf. Be sure to tune in next week for our next episode.